Okay, so just basic definition, union of two rays at a common point. Typically, we use a lot of Greek letters, so that's theta. This would be an acute angle, but we don't really focus heavily on acute obtuse. It comes up a little bit in the law of science. And just to reference the text here, let's see, share screen. Right. If you look at the there's a downloaded online version. If you look at the online version, you can click on a section and then it'll take you there. And then you can kind of look at stuff. And I'll try to kind of look at some pictures because there's going to be things that are drawn out nicely that are going to be easier to look at in graphically put together. So as we think about angle measurements, especially as it relates to what we're going to do with trigonometry, we're going to kind of go between two worlds, right? Trigonometry literally means a three-sided study, trigon, right? And so the next thing, 7.2, we're going to look specifically at basic trigonometric relationships, all 6 of them. And then as we move into 7.3, we're going to extend that into the unit circle. What we're going to do in 7.1 is just focus on the kind of basic definition of measuring an angle, starting with degrees, which I suspect you have sort of a little bit of a sense of, and then moving into radians. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel very confident about radians and degrees and going back and forth. So when I draw an angle in the a basic set of coordinate axes, I always put the common point at the center, and then I'm going to have my initial side be this positive x-axis, and I'm going to have this other side, which I call my terminal side, go counterclockwise in this direction. So I don't know what the size of that angle is, but I can say a few things about it in terms of its size. Try to give you one fact about that angle.
It's less than 90 degrees.
Less than 90 degrees. Perfect. Use the 90 degrees as a tool to help you kind of put little benchmarks, right? We know that this is a right angle, so this is 90 degrees. That's what a 90-degree angle would look like. If I had my ray going here and a ray going here, that's 90 degrees. So we know this is less than 90 degrees because we haven't got to 90 degrees yet. If we go over here, we know it's more than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees, right? Because I got 90 here, another 90 makes 180, another 90 makes 270, and another 90 makes 360. So I know that this angle, whatever it is, I'm going to call it alpha, is less than 90 degrees. I could estimate, maybe it's 80 degrees, maybe it's 78 degrees, I don't really know. So my initial side is always going to be in the positive x-axis. As I'm mapping out the angle, I would just go as far as I need to go in terms of the angle measurement. We're not going to get into like using protractors or anything. We're just going to kind of eyeball it and say, well, okay, we know that 90 is going straight up. We could do half of that and do 45. That would be exactly in the middle. We've actually got some other benchmark angles that we'll use, 30 degrees to 60 degrees. But that's kind of the starting point. Notice that if I do 400 degrees, there's nothing stopping me from going 400 degrees. Think about where you would end up if I went 400 degrees. In fact, let's have you just do a quick sketch. We'll call this a problem. And we'll check your thinking on it. Where do you think 400 degrees would put you? Do a drawing. So by drawing, I mean do your little coordinate axes, x-axis, y-axis, and put the terminal side where you think you would end up if you do 400 degrees. So what you should be doing is walking through, okay, I've gone 90 degrees, okay, I went another 90 degrees, and that's 180 degrees, okay. Keep going until you get to 400 degrees. Now, to help you answer the question, I'm going to give you some terminology. This is called quadrant 1. This is called quadrant 2. This is called quadrant 3. And this is called quadrant 4. Where did we end up? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Where do you think we ended up?
I ended up in 1.
Ended up in 1. Perfect. Because if we count in 90s, 90, 180, 270, 360, we're not going to make it another 90. How much is left? 40 degrees. Where does 40 degrees put us? You should have put yourself a little bit less than halfway through quadrant 1. And so that means that 400 degrees, how am I doing on that? Space here. I want to run on the side. Okay. 400 degrees is co-terminal, fancy vocabulary word, to 40 degrees. Because the terminal side for 40 degrees and 400 degrees is exactly the same thing.
They usually write it when you use the term coterminal like that. You almost have it as a fraction.
Say it again?
Right, you wrote like coterminal, you wrote like a line underneath that, you wrote 240.
Oh, I just underlined it because it's like a vocabulary term. No, nothing special. And it's one word. I put a little space there, but it's one word, coterminal. See if you can use that at your next dinner party. So I was hanging out in the parking lot, and I was co-terminal to, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. Let's expand it a little bit, right? What if we would say a negative angle? What about negative 130? What would be a good way to interpret the negative?
Go the other way.
Go the other way, right? If the standard is to go counterclockwise, negative just means we start going the other direction. Okay? Go ahead and put negative 130 where you think that would end up. Think about what quadrant you would name it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where does that end up?
Are you waiting for an answer, or are you just giving us time to do it?
Oh, fair question. Always, and thank you for asking instead of just shouting out the answer. Yeah, this is not a race, and so typically when I pose a problem, I'm going to give you space and then I'll ask for some answers. I think we probably had enough time at this point, so go ahead. What do you think? What quadrant should we be in?
3, quadrant 3.
Quadrant 3, good. Because we went this way, 90 degrees, we still have another 40 degrees to go. Apparently I really like 40 degrees. So we end up here, again, a little bit south of the halfway point, right? We didn't get to 45. So we're sitting down there, that's quadrant 3. That's a negative 130 degree angle. Okay, so skill 1 is I give you a number of degrees, you can make a drawing of it. That's a good start. All right, pat yourself on the back. Take a breath, just take a breath.